Hey everybody, this is Scoots. This is a new kind of experimental version of Sleep With Me we've never done before. So welcome. These are just bedtime stories from our podcast, Sleep With Me. And to make them feel fresh, these ones are from a couple of years ago. So if you're a regular listener, you might get a refresh. And if you're new, these are just bedtime stories from a show called Sleep With Me. They're strange, they're meandering, they're a little bit different. And all this is made possible by listeners like you, regular listeners like you. And so I just want to let you know that's how we're able to put the show out. And so if you are a fan of Sleep With Me, you listen to it on a regular basis, please consider supporting the show. You get ad-free episodes, you get ad-free story-only episodes, tons of other cool stuff at Sleep With Me Plus. That's sleepwithmepodcast.com/plus. But if you're in a position and you have some money every month, or you say, hey, maybe I don't watch that streaming service, I'd rather give it to a podcast, think about your favorite podcast. It doesn't have to be Sleep With Me, and support that podcast. If it is Sleep With Me, I consider supporting the show would be great. But if it isn't, or there's a podcast you listen to way more, brings you a lot of value during the day, please support that podcast. Podcasting is going through a different time right now, and your favorite podcast, the one you get the most out of, could use your support the most. So consider supporting it however they request support. Just check it out, like listen to the show or check out their website, or consider supporting Sleep With Me. If Sleep With Me, you say, oh no, Sleep With Me is the one I listen to the most, sleepwithmepodcast.com/plus. Thanks. Friends beyond the binary, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, when it's time to power down and unplug, but like this is a podcaster that's in to overuse, puns, and recharge, and, let those batteries get back, to recondition, I don't know what you do with the recondition. It's time to put the lithium in the ions and the ions in lithium, as we say in the imaginary, battery business. It's time to get those electrons slowing down so they can get moving tomorrow. It's time to settle them down. Hey, electrons, settle it down. You no need to wobble or spin now. Because this thing's not making any sense at all, because you're in the right place. It's time for Sleep With Me, the podcast that puts you to sleep. Hey, everybody, this is Scoots. This is a quick message here. If you get a lot out of Sleep With Me, if you're a regular listener, you like these new things we're trying out, like the story-only version of the show. If you're new, don't worry about any of this. But if you're a regular listener of Sleep With Me, or you're a regular listener of any podcast, if you have a favorite podcast, and it's not Sleep With Me, that's totally cool. If you have podcasts you listen to way more, or you get way more value out of, I totally understand that. Consider supporting that podcast. Podcasting as an industry is kind of going through a weird phase right now. Direct support from listeners is going to be, it seems like it's going to be the future of most shows. And so consider supporting the podcast you really love. And you could do that. You could find out, you could listen to the show and see how they ask to be supported, or reach out to them and say, hey, how can I support you? Or if you can't afford, a few dollars a month, you say, hey, how else can I support you? But if Sleep With Me is the one, Sleep With Me Plus is the best way to support Sleep With Me. Sign up for Sleep With Me Plus. Not only you get an unbelievably sweet, different ways to listen to the show, but it's a huge help for us to be able to do stuff like this. But yeah, think about what your favorite podcast is, and then go ahead and go to their website, or if you already know how they like to be supported, support that show. Thanks and good night. All right, everybody, this is Scoots here with another tale that tales never heard before. Even though maybe you should, maybe you could, maybe you would, but maybe you didn't. This is a tale, beloved tale that involves some people we haven't checked in a while. So long that I have no idea what the characters' names are. Names aren't always important. It's the people that are important. Even though you forget their names, you spend time with them. And she said, you created the characters, though. I said, no. I've just been relaying my tales that that I hear of out on in the highways and the byways of my mind. And those are the founders of the Purple People Circus, one of the most renowned circuses that you say, well, I'm not familiar with that one. I say, well, I know, but it's renowned. It has renown. Not even sure what renown means. Like, you say, what is a word that what's a proper word Scoots uses over and over again? Renown. When I reuse my nouns. Yeah, I call that, what's one technique that goes into Sleep With Me podcast that, no one talks about and has never been studied before, but there's a word for, but it's a word for something else, but Scooter repurpose, renown or reverb. Reverb. They call it reverb. This is reverbing. Like reverberation? Well, it reverberate. When I reverb things or renown things, what does that even mean, though? Well, it's when it's when I repeat a noun or a verb. Or rename. It's when you change a character's name? No, like sometimes I like to reuse their name over and over again. I rename them. Isn't that just repeating their name? Sure, but rename is easier to say. Rename, or what if you had? What would it be if there was a character? Has there ever been a character named Pete on your show? Do you want me to repeat? Are you asking if I've repeated before? Oh boy, have I! Yeah, I could do this all day, but this tale starts a long time ago. This is a tale about the Purple People Circus, but it's called, if it was a book, it would be called The Purple Porpoise with Purpose, The Purple Porpoise with Purpose. And it starts of all places in the sky, because this isn't the kind of porpoise you're thinking about. It starts at a time of the year that some would say, AJ and Allie would say it's the best time of the year. And that's a holiday season when this, when this tale, when the prequel, if we were doing the prequel to this tale, is that we would talk about, but it's the purple porpoise with purpose, was not a traditional mammalian porpoise, which is what I thought when I heard the story. I said, you got to tell me this story. The Purple Porpoise with Purpose. The only book I'm familiar with in that genre is Mr. Messy that I had to read over and over again when I would say, this is the story of my life. And I'd say, why am I reading it then over in front of my entire class? And they'd say, oh, okay, to make a point, to let me know you're the authority figure and I'm not. But that is not what happened with the Purple Porpoise with Purpose. Because use your patience for this tale. This started in Santa's sleigh, up in the sky, high in the sky. In the upper atmosphere even, or maybe not, I don't know where Santa flies. So many different Santa myths, and factual, all the different Santa stuff. And this is not a Santa-centric story, but I just got to get through it. Is that, so there was this porpoise, right? It was a purple porpoise. And, we've talked about different things about these gifts, like particularly when you get into, well, when did Santa stop delivering, that kind of stuff that we don't talk about with children. But this porpoise, purple porpoise, was in Santa's big bag of gifts. And, this only, like I would say that not the majority of Santa-based tales or tales with Santa Claus in it have this occurrence. Usually it's a mechanism for some other part of a story, and it is something you can't quite grasp, but sometimes there's toys that fall out of Santa's sleigh. And I don't know if Prep and Landing have covered this because Every time I watch those, then I get distracted, and then I get distracted by something. I say, wait a second, what would I do in that situation? And then I kind of start pretend I get caught up in it. Okay, so I'm unaware of what technological mechanisms they have to keep that from happening, but for the most part, they do. And also, we don't have a clear thing on when or if all toys are sentient. Are all sentient toys toys? I don't know, but put it on the SAT and let's find out the answer to it. Are all toys sentient? That's no. I mean, that's a no, clearly. Are all sentient toys gifts? No, but are the best toys gifts? No, I don't know, because sometimes the best toy is a toy you buy with your own hard-earned money, like when I bought that G.I. Joe hovercraft. Even though I know it was too old to buy it, and I shouldn't have been getting in the bathtub with G.I. Joes at my age, I did it, and I'll never look back. In matter of fact, I got to track one of those down and maybe get it. I didn't even think about that till another boondoggle here. But some toys do gain some degree of sentience. Now, it goes back to that reverberation thing, and a lot of it or most of it is beyond my understanding. But so this purple, okay, once upon a time, oh boy, I could have saved us 12 minutes there. But who would that have served? Just those people that want to get right into the myth. Once upon a time, there was a purple porpoise. It was in Santa's sleigh. One Christmas Eve, there was a purple porpoise. And you say, well, what was its name? I said, well, let me get to that. And this purple porpoise was at the top of Santa's bag on Christmas Eve, excited, like just slowly awakening that soon it would be in a home, and soon it would be now this purple porpoise, again, to back up, it had reached some sort of sentience earlier because it had some memories and some anticipations and expectations. Because this purple porpoise, and when you think about sea mammal and most sea-based plush, I can't say all sea-based plush or stuffed animals, is that the fact that there's a lot of hype, but when you're backstage, you're in post-production, you're in warehousing, you're in logistics, some of these toys get talking, and there is a bit of a game of telephone, I heard this, or I heard that, or I heard the elves talking, or the humans, or my predecessor told me, and there are alumni that do reach, if you want, now, you'd be surprised, but if an animal has a blowhole, it could be a blowhard, even if it's a plush animal. And at one point, they had a narwhal, I don't know, that had come to the North Pole, a toy that had a celebrated life as a toy and good companion, even made it to college, but slowly also gained sentience and independence, rare, and I guess financial independence or something, made its way back to the North Pole, as alumni tend to do, and said, well, I want to get back to the North Pole and stroll the halls of I want to return home and see what it was like, feel what it feels like, and, blow some hot air about what the big world's like out there. And actually, it wasn't that much of a blowhard because the narwhal did not tell everybody this, but when it got into the sea mammal plush area I don't know, I just call it logistics, but I'm sure it's like warehousing, pre-staging. This is the kind of stuff that doesn't even make it in a prep and landing thing, because they say, well, okay, well, we could do that. That's the kind of part we show during the commercial scoots. That's what they always say when I send them a message. They say, "Dear Prep and Landing." Wait a second. Hold on. Isn't that the department? Oh, boy. Sorry, I forgot your names. I thought you were Prep and Land. Maybe you are, though. They said, where does everything get, how does that all work? Make a sleep podcast. But so this Narwhal, I don't know, a sea-based mammal. Maybe it's a mammal. I'm not even sure. But it went there, and it just went to the section with the sea-based plush. Nearby, I think at least at this stage of the prep, it was with other sea-based toys or sea beings, surface vessels. Nothing with a specific utility. So not like scuba stuff, but scuba Steve type toys. And, dolphin, all that kind of stuff. It was all in the same general vicinity. So this Narwhal wanted to go back and walk the halls and, relive those times. Oh, boy, I remember when this didn't have digital whatever. I don't know. Looks a lot smaller now, or does it look bigger? That kind of pondering. But for all the toys and stuff, they said, yo, hey, what do we got going here? These, while there is, okay, so again, this is tough to understand. I'm not an elf and I don't work for Santa, so I can't say why I don't understand it or why it doesn't make sense to me. Because I'm not there. I can just say, yes, I recognize none of this makes a lot of sense, but not all these toys are sentient. Again, one of those Santa-based things beyond my understanding. But some of the toys are, and so you say some communicate, some don't. And some of them are like, hey, what's it like out there? Blah, blah, blah. And the Narwhal went on this one tangent, not as long as this one I'm on, but, and said, basically, once upon a time, I could have done it that way probably. But the Narwhal said, they said, what's it like? Blah, blah, blah. And then, the Narwhal kind of had to go through what is it like to be a plush? What is it like to be a stuffed animal? Also wanted to point out that for some reason that the Narwhal didn't understand, a lot of sea-based plush is foam, not a one of those loose stuffings. A lot of them have foam balls, polystyrene, I would assume, or something like that. A lot of them are constructed from that. Their insides are made of that material versus a batting or a fiber fill type thing. The Narwhal said, if you do have that kind of filling, you're probably stuffed because we have to keep our shape. Basically, we're stuffed different than a lot of other stuffed animals because we're shaped different, positive thing, some bears or other things, they're more rounded. But, it's just something they've learned over the years. And, of course, none of the toys who are just basically children, but some of the toys, whatever, they develop at different, rates. So some of the toys were like, what the heck you mean? Why is that important to know? And like I would say, the Narwhal said, well, that's a great question. And, of course, that's why I'm talking about it, because you're really all so lucky. And the Narwhal looked over to the other lanes nearby and said, by the way, if you're not a plush, but you're a bath toy, you're lucky too. Because the Narwhal said the strangest thing about being a sea-based mammal or, non-mammal sea toy, whether you're water-based or you're going to be land-based, you get a lot of different experiences that maybe not all these other toys out there are going to get. And they said, what do you mean? And then, like, the Norwal got distracted and explained the the toys that could be used in the tub, but aren't just 100% tub-centric toys. Like, well, you might get played with in the sand. You might get played with a play set. It could all depends on how the child wants to imagine things. And the same goes for all you, my plush people. Because of your shape, not only will you be snuggled with and maybe be in bed with a child or on the couch, or maybe you'll be their companion on travels, but you're going to be, because of your structure, because you have a much firmer superstructure, you might even get played with. And he goes, I think it's something about our fins because, and because we're firmer. It's just a fact. And oh boy, are you lucky. And that's why I came back here, because I'm just so grateful for the life I've lived. And then, some of the toys said, well, what do you mean? And they said, no. And just, you get to a certain age as a toy and you want to look back. I want to be, a toy like you again. They said, well, why don't you hop in the bin? And I said, no. I have traveled, it's your turn. So up in Santa's sleigh, this purple porpoise that would have purpose one day already felt like it had whoa, boy. Can't wait to get down to where I'm going. Because then I'll be under that tree. I'll get to experience the thrill of the holiday season. And then, I wonder if I'll be a snuggle toy, or I'll be, they'll be a play toy, or maybe even they'll use me for puppetry or shows. So I'm really excited. I wonder which of my purposes will be the one I, fulfill first. Now, this night, it's not famous for this event. It's famous for another event, glamorized by Hollywood and books. From Golden Books to the Gold. I don't know if they ever did it on the Golden Girls. They probably did. But this was the night of Rudolph's first flight. Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. This was Rudolph's first flight across the, whatever, where they said, Santa, oh, so tight. Get your nose out here. Even though it's a whole nother story, but Santa said, Rudolph, you got a bright nose. We need it. It's a stormy night. Again, not everything North Pole based is within the realm of our understanding, or at least my understanding, as a regular human being. And Rudolph, play with our reindeer games or whatever. Get up in the sky and let's go tonight. Anyway, that's a complicated song and movie. We don't need to get into it. But Rudolph was flying. It was a stormy night. This is just to explain why. Whatever active countermeasures were supposed to keep this purple porpoise in the Santa's bag. Or, you're a smart listener. I know you. You say, wait a second, Scoots. This is also beyond our understanding. And beyond the understanding of this purple porpoise, maybe. And I'd say you're probably right. You're probably right. Oh, boy, are you probably right. But at the time, none of us knew that. And the purple porpoise didn't know that. And they hit some turbulence, and the bag was open, and whatever. The purple porpoise popped out into the night sky. But then something happened, because it wasn't just fly up, because I don't know what's that called, but the purple porpoise already had momentum, because the purple porpoise was traveling at the same speed as the sleigh. And also whatever, there's some sort of whatever, supersonic stuff is going on. And there's magic in that old tin hat they found, or whatever they said, and so the purple porpoise got kind of sucked into a little bit of a vortex of the sleigh, but that's also had some, I don't know, they have that's on Prep and Landing. There's magical afterburners or something. They have electrified pixie sticks with magical energy, something. So the purple porpoise got swept up in that. And luckily for the purple porpoise, it also, like, put the purple porpoise into a nice, deep, calm sleep. And the purple porpoise floated. And again, because of this, like, exact same thing that Norwal had pointed out, and because of the magic or whatever, but also because of the shape, and it was like that foam that you kind of pull, like those foam beads or whatever. The purple porpoise had a somewhat aerodynamic shape. Now, nothing like, a jet plane or anything. But it flew, and it got caught in updrafts and downdrafts. And eventually it floated and floated down. And of all places it would land, it landed, I mean, talk about irony, but it landed, what is those called? Like, antlers. I think that's what they're called. Reindeer. It ended up in a set of reindeer antlers. Or maybe they're moose antlers. I'm sorry. Like, and giant moose antlers. So, and like that were cupped in a way that the moose was kind of unaware of it. The moose was sleeping, and this purple porpoise was sleeping. And like the purple porpoise landed in the moose's thing, the top of one of the moose's antlers. And this was one of those giant mooses that you'd see in the Great Canadian North. I don't know. I mean, I don't want to trope it, but that's where I'd expect to see it. Wide antlers, or, yeah, I think they're called antlers, and a little bit of moss and greenery. And right on the edge of a little bit of an overhang, this moose had found a place to sleep. And then the moose awoke the next day, and the next day the sun rose, and again, this was a magical sleep the porpoise was under. And so the moose started to walk, and this moose was in the middle of, this moose was on its own journey. This moose was named Glisten, and Glisten had, I don't know, Glisten was just, it had, again, I was trying to go explain something without going too far afield. But Glisten had gone far afield. From being a moose, Glisten had done a lot of watching TV through windows. I think the most, this wasn't Glisten, but it was glamorized in that northern exposure. Not even, it wasn't glamorized, like that show glamorized it, I think. Or maybe my imagination created it, but it wasn't glamorized outside of northern exposure. But this moose would wander around these towns. And this was back once upon a time when main streets sold TV. They had TV repair stations and they sold TV stations in independent stores. And repair people could repair TVs. So I think in northern exposure it's one or the other, where the moose could just wander around the downtown and look in the window and watch TV. And Glisten was raised in an area somewhere, I don't know where it was, to be honest. I don't know if it was U.S., Canada, or somewhere else, in the northern or southern hemispheres. Mooses are also beyond they are beyond my knowledge base. But this moose, Glisten, watched a lot of TV. And this happened to be an era where there was like a lot of, like at least when the time Glisten was watching, or at least Glisten, I don't know how much the TV shows Glisten consumed, that Glisten processed, other than like wanting to, suddenly Glisten was like, I'd like to be a beast of burden. And, like I said, would fantasize about it, fall asleep thinking about it, wake up thinking about it, being an ox, being a draft horse, and whatever shows. I don't know if there was like shows from like I don't know what from the West or like Middle Ages or farming shows, probably all of those that Glisten was watching. And what Glisten would do, and this was an area where mooses, but they were held in high regard and respected. But for the most part, they were meant to say, hey, let the moose, let them live their lives, please. It was like the majority of reasonable adults and children and the policy. They said, hey, let the mooses live their lives, please. Now, that didn't work out in a good way for Glisten, because what Glisten would do then is go to, like, farmsteads and just stand around hoping and, like, kind of, like, look tough or push stuff or maybe push a log. But all the people would do is appreciate it or, like, look at it in a forlorn way. Like, oh, boy, that looks like a powerful moose. But I just wanted that moose to be free to play like it's playing now. I couldn't, use it as like a working animal because it's a moose and wouldn't want that. It just wants to out there push that log around in front of us like it's putting on a show. And Glisten got better and better at it because of, it was like, these people are watching me. What the heck do I got to do to get a job being like a farm, like working on this farm? It can outpull, like it can do everything those oxes can do or that horse can. No offense. Maybe the farm's big enough for both of us or all of us. But it just didn't happen. But like Glisten was not a quitter. Mooses don't quit. I think you probably heard that before. So don't quit on the mooses either. But so Glisten was just traveling around, working Glisten's way across the world, or wherever, the areas it was in. Now, meanwhile, at this point, Glisten's got a plush, sentient, purple porpoise in its, rack, we'll say. And it's moving along in the sun and heading further and further along. And at some point, the sunlight and the magical sleep wears off of the purple porpoise. The purple porpoise's name was Preety. Preety the purple porpoise. And I just waited because this is a part of the story where Preety will communicate. So that's why I'm telling you now. But so Preety woke up and didn't open their eyes because Preety said, oh, boy, here it is. It finally must be Christmas. Maybe I'm being carried around now by a child. We've all done that, right? We've kept our eyes closed, even though we're in the presence of something else and we feel excited. Might be when Koa comes to check on me to see if I'm awake, or a child or a parent or a loved one or a roommate or whatever. There's times where you keep your eyes closed. You don't want to open them yet, even though you feel good. And Preety was doing that, and you said, wait a second, I feel like a cool breeze. Well, maybe we're outside already playing. Maybe I'm already part of some sort of play. But Bree opened her eyes and she looked around, and she saw some like muck, which is, positive, stuff that's gathering in the bowl-like thing of a moose. And then kind of saw the moose was lumbering along and knew something was not right. And Preety said, what in the heck, where am I? And Glisten said, what the heck, is there somebody talking? And this could have been, we could do 20 minutes, but we don't really need to, of like the comedy duo type situation where for a while Glisten thought, I guess we could do it because, just the summary was, for a while, Preeti was still getting to know, like, how she was going to move, because she hadn't planned on that. She had planned on being carried around by a child or saying, well, this is your place. And so she was kind of in the cup of the rack of the moose. And meanwhile, Glisten was hearing this voice and, like, thinking that this is, again, these are the levels of Hollywood glamorization that go on. Oh, this is some sort of voice to help me. And pretty kind of, this was all new to them. So they said, okay, well, and then even part of it, like, and this is something I could really relate to, was this is a child playing with me. Maybe my expectations about a child were wrong. So that explains, like, a lot of it as they were journeying. You know, Glisten said, who's speaking? It's me, Preeti, the purple porpoise. And, you know, Glisten said, the purple porpoise. And Preeti said, yeah, I'm here with purpose, to be played with or to be your companion. And Glisten said, oh, yeah, I've been, like on TV. And then Glisten said, Preeti said, what's TV? But whatever, like, that went on for a while, but it's just not super, they eventually discovered, because sooner or later, you know, Glisten was going to move or toss, you know, to do that glamorous tossing of moose hair or dip its head to drink. And in this case, it wasn't to drink. It was it was doing some practice. Every day, Glisten would practice at all this stuff. So log pushing, log tossing. If Glisten ever found any rope or vines, it would practice, like, putting on, like, a harness, grabbing stuff with its mouth and dragging it, digging with its hooves. So it went to kind of move a log, and that's when Preeti fell out and it said, oh, hey, what? And this, yeah, no, it's me, Purple Porpoise. Oh, okay. And then they said, oh, wow, so you're real. I thought you were just a voice, you know, that's helping me find. But that's when Preeti said, oh, so your purpose is to find, you know, they started to feel the forlorn feelings together, even though they were different forlorn feelings. You know, Glisten wanted to be like a working moose, but also its expectations were based on TV, and Preeti wanted to be a toy in the arms of a child or playing with as a child, as imagined through the eyes of a narwhal visiting the North Pole warehouses. And Preeti said, well, I wonder if we could find something together, because they would stop and watch TV. And then they said, well, some of these, you know, Little House on the Prairie, there's kids that live there. If we could only find the Little House on the Prairie, you know, and that's really what they set out to do. Like, I think that was just one of the shows that they really got into for a while. And I think 2 or 3 towns they stayed in for years, and just until, like, they changed whatever the programming time. And they said, okay, no more Little House on the Prairie. They're all grown up. It's no longer, you know, whatever. But at the time they said, wow, we got to find that Little House on the Prairie, because they like, you know, it looks like they got kids there. They got farm work there. They got Michael Landon. They also were confused because it was like Rod repeats there. Why should they see them? That's also an angel. So it was, but whatever. That was their mission. Find the Little House on the Prairie. But at the time, well, one, I mean, we all know. Some of you are like, what's the Little House on the Prairie? Well, it's a Little House on a Prairie. Been in books and a TV show. Probably, I mean, the reboot will probably be out in the next year or two. I don't know which streaming services bought it, but I can, if not, send a check my way, 10%. I mean, you don't even need to include me, but it'd be nice if I could get 10% of something. Oh, who would I cast? I don't know, because I'm in the middle of a story here, but who would I cast? I got no idea, but I mean, it's probably already in production or pre-production. And if not, like, really go for it and get the rights, because, I mean, if you're going to reboot, if you're going to make like movies about, whatever peeps, you might as well. Why aren't you rebooting Little House on the Prairie? I mean, maybe there's some reason I say, oh boy, okay, that's why. But so they were in search of this little house on the prairie. Little house on the prairie, full of nice people that were active and liked, would love to have a purple porpoise and a useful moose in their lives. Also, it didn't necessarily exist in the world we're in. It was a piece of fiction. But here's the thing, as they were traveling and looking, they were talking, getting to know one another, and somehow, and you forget this, because I think this mechanism exists in each one of us, but it's so easy to forget or so easy to turn the volume down on. And that's sometimes why we find out, like someone tells me these tales as a reminder that there's a mechanism of self-care that's built in there if you just listen. And these two, they might not have known they were looking for the wrong little house on the prairie. But what they did get to talk and was, what they dreamed of. And, what you dream of and what you get are always a little bit different, but that doesn't mean, that it has to be an all or nothing situation. And these two said, okay, they actually got down to pretty much the thing. They said, well, what do you really want, Preeti? When, because first they would have strong feelings. Those are the forlorn and the deep, sad times, at night when they were sitting there sleeping together. But then as they were there for one another and they just listened and said, wow, that sounds real tough, Preeti. Wow, I can understand why I'd be so upset, Glisten. They said, well, oh, wait a second. So what do you really want, Preeti? Well, I want to be played with. I want to be a toy that brings joy. And Glisten said, okay, I think I can figure out, what do you want, Glisten? Well, I want to be a working moose. I want to be a bit like, I don't want to be a beast of burden, but that's what they call it, a beast of burden. And Preeti said, well, sometimes they said that I'm a purple porpoise with purpose. And if I need to be played with, you would be a working moose. If you played with me, you would be a working moose. And they said, okay, well, I think this is it. And as they were on their journey to get what they wanted, it's weird because there's a Beast of Burden song and they were getting what they needed, which is another song. That's a total accident. But they were out there and they got what they found, not just self-care, but care for one another, but also making the most of things. And so Glisten would start throwing Preeti up in the air and then catching Preeti in the other horn or whatever, antler. And Preeti was developing, again, beyond our understanding, it's some sort of, magical skeletal system or something. And so they got good at stuff, and then Preeti could direct Glisten, and they would make forts, or you could throw, like they saw a basketball thing, so then Glisten was playing kind of like shooting hoops with Preeti, and Preeti's, a stuffed plush. And even then, a couple times, Preeti, landed on the wrong side of the log, and, Glisten was very, very adept with teeth, so they learned to sew. But a lot of it was like throwing Preeti up in the air, and then eventually they saw some juggling stuff, and Glisten could throw a log and Preeti and everything. And this is when, sometimes things work out in a different way. And they were out there, out in the middle, I don't know, not a total frozen tundra, but someplace where it's cold a lot of the time. And they'd been wandering, and they came across a lone house, a little house. It wasn't exactly on a prairie, but maybe it, I don't, you could say, well, that's a little too far south, but you could say it was a prairie. Because they said, is that the little house on the prairie? And at this point, unfortunately, they had done all that, but they'd also gone to a bunch of farms and stuff, and Glisten still hadn't gotten any work, and Preety was looking pretty like she was a plush that lived in the antler of a moose for a few years, even though fully repaired and functioning. She was less of a purple porpoise, so children weren't in her. They never identified it as a plush in the antlers of the moose when Glisten would put on shows to try to get a job, which was impossible to get because the people can't. They said you know what I mean. It was just a little bit of so they were both a little bit down. So down, in fact, that they got outside of this, they got outside just as the sun was setting. And they were standing against the western sky in front of the windows of this house. And they could see a couple in the house. They could see the light coming from this little house on this prairie. They could see the couple in there moving around and watching them and appreciating them. And unfortunately, they Preety said, well, why don't you get to, there's some stuff in this this whatever this is, move that stuff, some logs. Looks like they're chopping wood. They're watching us at showtime. And Glisten said, I don't think we're ever, I think we're I don't think I'm never going to be a beast of burden. And this is something that happened before, but they said, okay, well, but maybe you're right this time. And I don't see any kids to play with me either. So first they were down, but then they said, well, let's play then. Because, they're and then tomorrow we'll figure out what our new purpose is. Maybe tonight's the night. You're right, Glisten. We've been on the wrong quest. Maybe this is our last little house on the prairie. And tomorrow we try to figure out what we should do next. But let's play toss Preety. And Glisten said, okay. And then Preety said, I bet you can't toss me, over they got to, and run under, because they had clotheslines. They didn't know what they're called, but you think you could toss me over it and then run under it and catch me? Dare ya? And who cares what those humans think anyway? And so they started doing that. Glisten would toss Preety and run under the clotheslines and catch Preety. And then Glisten started juggling Preety with some, big logs. And, Glisten was doing other stuff, hopping up on 2 feet and then juggling Preety with his top clompers or whatever. Putting on the whole show. What they didn't know was the 2 people whose names I forgot that had founded the Purple People Circus were the 2 people in this little house on this prairie. Now, they weren't farmers, and they weren't parents that I know of, and I forgot their names. I know they had cool names, and I know they're cool people. That's all that matters, is they were sitting there, and they had been just at the end of a break from Purple People Circus, where they took a break from performing and putting on shows. And they had kind of lost, they had lost a little bit of the magic because things had changed in the world, and, they couldn't put on any more shows. And they wondered themselves if there was room. They had been there on a sabbatical. There's just the 2 of them for a while. Like a couple, whatever, how you were. So they were there. But they'd gotten, this was like right at the end of their sabbatical where they said, I guess, well, I don't know what we should do. Should we go back? Should we get the performers we keep in touch with back together? And they said, well, we're here. What's our purpose? The Purple People's Circus is to bring joy and excitement and the joy of performing and the joy of being a part of a performance and the joy of viewing a performance and of being surprised. The keystone of the Purple People's Circus is unexpected, like that cat that break dances or whatever. And that's, and Phil Fushigi and all that. And they had just had this discussion. And, then they had to, spend some time cooking dinner. And then they made their dinner and ate their dinner. And so they were really basking in the glow of this firelight. And they were having some tea and just looking out at the sunset on this prairie. Beautiful, snowy. It wasn't a prairie, but, for this situation. And that's when they saw this beautiful moose come into their yard. And they said, this is one big, beautiful moose. Wow. Regal. But the moose looks a little sad. Well, isn't it interesting how we project our feelings onto animals? It looks like the moose is looking right at us, waiting for us or thinking about us. And I mean, talk about unexpected things. Then the moose started to toss something in the air and catch it. And if this was a different era, they would have filmed it on their phone and got 4 million views. But no, this was one of the things they were looking for. And then they said, what is that? The moose is And then they said, wait a second, is that a stuffed bunny? No. Looks like a fish. Wait a second. And then when the moose stopped and it looked like the moose, they said, and they had learned, they had been around, they knew about sentient non-human beings. So they opened their door and they said, hey, that's quite a show. They clapped and smiled. And that was also one of their tests to say, well, is this sentient non-human being want to engage with me? We'll offer it the opportunity, but not force it to engage with us. And meanwhile, Preeti and Glisten were like, wait a second, they were watching us. They liked that. Feels like as good as it feels like they played with us. Doesn't that feel good? And like we met our purposes? And Glisten said, oh, it does feel good. Let's get a little closer. And then they said, can we get closer? And they said, come on closer. And they said, that was like a show you put on there. And, the next thing you knew, of course, you can infer what happened next. Slow trust-building exercise unfolded. And, they won one another's trust, and then they explained to them what a circus was and what performing was. And now you've probably seen Preeti in the arms of children everywhere. That purple porpoise with purpose, Preeti. In that became like there's not just one Preeti in the world now. There's one in the arms of so many children. And, but they still perform, Glisten and Preeti performing as part of the Purple People's Circus, the legendary juggling moose and its best friend Preeti, and it's also a comedy team. And they say, how is a moose how do they do that? What kind of ventriloquism is it? No one knows. But they both, kind of got what they were looking for in a different way, and they became part of a family and a community. So, I guess that's the end of the story. It's certainly one of my favorite ones I've ever heard. Story of Preety the purple porpoise with purpose and glisten the moose. Thanks and good night, everybody. All right, everybody, I want to thank everybody who became a patron recently. I want to thank Eduardo, Kate, and Angela. Thank you, thanks, and good night. I want to thank Christian, Marleke, and Joanna. Thank you, thanks, and good night. I want to thank Isabel, Chloe, and Lisa. Thank you, thanks, and good night. I want to thank Paul, Anna, and Will. Thank you, thanks, and good night. I want to thank Faye, Dana, and Adam. Thank you, thanks, and good night. I want to thank Travis, Quinn, and Jeff. Thank you, thanks, and good night. I want to thank Katrina, Zoe, and Eddie. Thank you, thanks, and good night. Ann, Lizzie, and Anu. Thank you, thanks, and good night. Gary, Mary, and Anastasia. Thanks, and good night to Josh, Myrna, and Alyssa. Thank you, thanks, and good night to Trish and Chloe. Thank you, thanks, and good night to Lorelai and Rachel. Thanks, and good night. Sleep With Me exists a free podcast because people that support the show on Patreon, support our sponsors. We grow by people just sharing their honest experience with the show, or not even just talking about podcasts in general and teaching people how to use podcast apps. Is a great way. You don't even have to introduce them to Sleep With Me. Just introduce them to podcasts, and Sleep With Me will benefit. And if you're listening still and you say, Sleep With Me is not for me, it doesn't work for me, or this, and this, go to sleepwithmepodcast.com/no thank you. There's a lot of other great sleep podcasts out there and other stuff you could use to fall asleep to that I recommend on that page. Check it out, because your sleep's important. You're important. Even if you don't like the show, that's totally, that's the majority of people in the world. Or if you say, well, you're not my taste, Scoots, yeah, you still deserve a good night's sleep. So check out sleepwithmepodcast.com/no thank you. And here's a little bit more about our referral program and stuff. Thanks. Hey, everybody, this is Scoots with a tuck you in message here for our bedtime story podcast. We're trying out, and I kind of said this, free way to support Sleep With Me and bedtime stories from Sleep With Me is join our referral program, sleepwithmepodcast.com/refer, REFER. You get rewarded for introducing people to the free version of Sleep With Me, including access to Sleep With Me Plus. But most of all, just think about what your favorite podcast is or one of your favorite podcasts, and then support that podcast. It doesn't have to be Sleep With Me, but just to support your favorite podcast because they could use your support right now. And if you decide, Sleep With Me is actually my favorite podcast, well, wow, I'm blushing, seriously, even though it's imaginary here in this context, and support it at sleepwithmepodcast.com/plus. Or listen to a show you love and see how they want to be supported. Thanks.